welcome back, everybody, to the Just One More Level podcast. I am your co-host, Christian.
And I am your co-host, John.
And this week on the podcast, or for the podcast, or whatever, we played a little bit of Jak 2, man. Jak fucking 2.
Yeah. Jak, Jak fucking 2.
Look,
Okay.
I have issues with Jak 2, okay? Because Jak and Daxter 1... We talked about Jak and Daxter, right? The Precursor Legacy. Okay, I thought we did, but we've done enough games at this point. It's starting to get hard to keep track of. Anyways, one of my favorite games. I love Jak and Daxter 1, right? It's a great platformer collectathon. It's a lot of fun. It's got some quirky characters, some decent dialogue and story and whatnot. Love the world, all that stuff.
Right.
And then Jak 2, you're thrown into it, right? There's this big time skip from the first game to this one. They don't explain any of the shit that happened in like the 3 years or whatever. All they explain is that you were captured and tortured a little bit, and now you sometimes turn into a monster. Oh, also, now you're in a city doing GTA style shit, taking missions and whatnot. And the world is also going to be like 1,000 times worse than the one you were playing in before. The missions are going to be ass. You're going to lose all of the charm and platforming fun from the first one. Don't get me wrong. On its own, it's a perfectly fine game. What annoys me about it so much is that it's a sequel to Jak 1. Because Jak 1, in my opinion, was better in every way.
Okay. Yeah, I would agree. Okay. So I want to put that out there. I agree. Yeah. Jak 1 is better, and I would say Jak 1 even is better in every way. But I don't hate it quite as much, I think. I guess I was just underwhelmed. The thing that I disliked the most, to touch on all the points that you touch on, I'll go kind of in order, right? So starting from the beginning, like Christian was saying, you really don't get an update. You assume that a time skip has happened. You're back on the island with the girl and the old guy that you were doing missions for in the first game. And, of course, Daxter is there. And there's some big precursor machine that apparently the girl has built, which is believable. She was building machines in the first game, right? So you and the old guy and the girl and Daxter all journey through this dimension machine that they've managed to throw together from the precursor relics. And Jak and Daxter are separated from the group, and they end up in big scary city. And
shit
big scary city, yes. So big scary shit city abducts Jak for some reason. I think he's the same species as them.
Yeah,
and they think that maybe he is operating for the opposing side, because there's some kind of war going on, I think. At least there's skirmishes between like rival clans, it seems. So whoever these guys work for owns the city. He runs the city, and they experiment on him with something called Dark Eco. Now, if you remember Eco from the first game, it was the fun substancey stuff that you would collect to do puzzles. And now it's like something very different. Dark Eco existed in the first game. That is what made Daxter Daxter. So it has been pre-established in the universe that Dark Eco can transform you into some other form.
Right.
But they have harnessed it and are injecting it into him. I think it's kind of implied that they're trying to make him into some kind of weapon or super soldier. Like
something
that's just
along
what
those lines,
feels
right?
like. They don't really spell it out, though. They just...
And that's what I was saying. Like the whole intro to this game, like the very intro part that you just talked about, with them building the machine, them being teleported to another place, blah 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 blah. That all makes sense. Like there's a small time gap presumed, but then you're transported to this place, and like that's fine, whatever. But then what bothers me is that there's a huge time gap in the course of years from when you're teleported there and abducted to whenever you actually start playing. And they don't show any of that. It's just you're abducted, and then they show one experiment that's being done on you years later, and then now you're playing the game. And the other thing that annoys me about it, there's a side game that takes place in between the two. It's just called Daxter, where you actually play as Daxter going around. And I was like, okay, maybe that game kind of spells out what happened in between the two. No, it has the same time skip it just starts like a few months or whatever before Jak 2 does. And
Oh,
so
that's
it
dumb.
annoyed the shit out of me. Like, it didn't even go into the explanation. I was like, okay, so
Well,
if I play
here's
this game, I can know all the shit that happened over the course of these years. And no, you don't get to learn
no,
any of that.
no, you
None of
don't.
it.
So
It's
here's the thing, like, too, like, so Daxter accompanies you as always, right?
right. Yeah, of
So
course.
Jack goes out into the city and starts his journeys, his goings on, and Daxter is just along for the ride. Doesn't he know anything? Hasn't he been spending 3 years
That's
in this
the
city
thing. You
looking
would
for
think,
me,
like in the Daxter thing, it
looking
seems
for
like he
Jack?
doesn't. I think maybe he looked for a little while and then he just kind of stopped from the like 30-second cutscene that you get playing Daxter. And then
Yeah.
you become an exterminator where you're exterminating bugs, and at some point that leads up to you finally getting around to saving Jak. I haven't beat the game. I've only played through about half of it, so I don't know how it ends up directly connecting to Jak 2. I just know
Okay.
that like you're teleported to this world, time skip happens, an exterminator finds you in a bar and is like, "Hey, do you want to come work for me?"
Hmm.
Like that's it. That's
That
it
okay.
irritates the shit out of me, man. And like so
Is
like there's
Jack
that, but like
3
I
any
was
better? I know there's more vehicle stuff in Jack
yeah,
3,
a
right?
lot of people seem to like Jak 3 more because Jak 2, it seems like they were trying to gear themselves more towards, the hardcore gamer crowd and whatnot, wanted to not be quite so kiddie with their gameplay or whatever.
Okay.
It seems like it's kind of what they were trying to do, and from what I've been told, because I haven't played Jak 3 yet, from what I've been told, Jak 3 kind of does more of a mix of the two, right? It balances the two a little bit better with the more
Okay.
gritty, real gamer shit, and then the softer, kid friendly, haha,
Okay.
funny, not taking myself seriously stuff.
Okay.
So I presume 3 is better, but like it's not just that. I've also noticed that Jak 2 seems to be more glitchy. Like there's more
Yeah.
areas where you just kind of clip through things, animations that don't play out quite as nicely. It just
Yeah.
seems, all
Yeah.
in all, it just feels and seems like a really rushed game.
That okay. Yeah, I could see maybe that. Yeah. I what I was gonna say is my main point about the biggest negative for me
Hmm.
was the driving. The
Yeah.
driving controls okay in theory, but you're driving inside of a city and it's constantly congested.
Hmm.
And there's guards looking for you all the time.
Right.
So if you interact with the guards just wrong, everything falls apart and they start attacking you. So it's really frustrating because you're driving around the city and you can drive your car like side to side and whatnot, and you can like accelerate and stop and all that kind of stuff, and then you can switch levels in your hover
Hmm.
car. You
Yeah,
can
like up and
either
down.
hover
Yeah.
right, you can either hover at like building heights or you can hover at like ground heights, and it's like I believe that that's part of it. You're supposed to just keep dropping back and forth, up and down
Yeah, to get
to
around the
avoid the
traffic. But if you go to the
obstacles.
bottom level, you can hit people and stuff, so it's not
Right,
always like reasonable to drop down.
right,
It's
and
it's
you hit
weird.
guards, and there's a entire section of town at the far end of the town that eventually becomes one of your missions. Some of your
Hmm.
missions are there. That is all on boardwalks and water,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah, yeah.
so annoying to try to drive your car through it.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. It really,
You
really is.
you
He's
you
not wrong.
drop up and down, and there's like sub levels because the game I think doesn't understand like the difference between the planks that you walk on and the water. So
Yeah.
you can drive your hover car, you can hover on the planks, or you can just hover on the water. And sometimes you'll get stuck on a plank, and when you try to go up a level, it fucks up.
Yeah, it just doesn't basically. And another thing, just because like we record this live for anyone who doesn't know, and we have
Yeah.
video footage playing back while we do so. It's like I'm
Yeah.
watching the footage, and it reminded me another thing that really irked me about the game. Jak 1 is very vibrant, right? You're on it. You start the game on an island with a lot of pretty, colors, a lot of vibrancy, a lot of greens and yellows and different creatures and things. This game takes place, at least in the beginning. It opens up a little bit later on, but in a cityscape, in a very drab cityscape with a lot of like industrial type buildings and machines and things like that. So
Right.
90% of at least the early game ends up being just gray and brown. And that's
Hmm.
basically it. And that's another thing that bothers me about it. Like it just doesn't look as good either. as Jak 1 in my opinion,
Right.
because there's
Yeah.
just it lost most of its character
Yeah.
in the switch from Jak 1 to 2.
That's a good way to put it, I think. It's crisp. Don't get me wrong.
Oh
It looks
yeah, it
good for a
looks good for
PS2
the
game.
time. Yeah.
Sure.
It just lost
But yeah,
all of its unique vibrancy, all of its color, all of its
I think
life.
yeah.
It could be
This
like
game, I think. Do you think maybe they were kind of taking a page out of Ratchet and Clank's book a little bit? Because that's what
I
this world reminds me of a little bit more, at least in the beginning, with this factory
I
setting.
disagree completely. Well, okay, sure. Like the factory settings are fairly common
I
in
I just
Ratchet and Clank,
I
but
disagree
they're very
completely.
colorful. But no, I mean like the world as a whole. I disagree
Yeah.
very much that
No,
it's
Ratchet and
like
Clank is
Ratchet and
not.
Clank.
I wouldn't have that criticism about Ratchet and Clank that you just said.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
agree with you with Jak 2, but I wouldn't criticize Ratchet and Clank by saying that I think it's drab or dull. Yeah, Ratchet and Clank is very colorful and vibrant, just like the
yeah.
first Jak game is.
And also,
But
Ratchet and Clank has done a very good job of never taking itself too seriously, and it feels
Right.
like that's what happened with this game. It feels like
Yeah,
a combination of they wanted to take themselves too seriously, and
yeah,
they were rushed to put out the project, which makes me wonder. I know nothing about the development of this one. Like, I know a little bit about the development of Jak 1, but not 2. But it feels to me like they were almost like maybe they were making a sequel to Jak 2 that was more like Jak 1, and then somebody came along, probably a higher up or something like that, came along and
okay,
was like, "Hey, we need to be a little bit edgier. We need to, to pursue that older gamer crowd instead of making this kid friendly stuff. We want to be the cool edgy game, not a
right,
Ratchet and Clank, not a Mario or whatever." And so
okay.
like then they had to restart from scratch. That's what it feels like to me.
But
Obviously, I
even
don't know
Ratchet
if
and
that's true
Clank
at
is
all.
no, that's fair. I think it probably could be. I think that was at least a contributing factor. I'm sure, just given the era that this game
Mhm.
came out in. But um, oh, what was I going to say here? I was just thinking that that probably could be part of the reason why we're feeling that it flopped so hard is because they were trying to take too much inspiration from everything that was out at the time instead of just falling back on what made the first game so popular and loved.
Right. Yeah. And
They were
I
trying
think it
to.
really falls flat for that. And again, like I don't want to say that this is a bad game because I don't think Jak 2 is a bad game. It's just a
Not
bad
necessarily,
Jak
no.
2. Like
Yeah.
if
I
this
I
was,
would say, yeah,
if this
it
was
falls flat of expectations.
what's I can't even think if this was Eco Wars or something, I don't know, some other game like if it was a spin-off or just a new
Yeah,
IP
spin-off would be
entirely or
good.
whatever, I
Mhm.
wouldn't have hated it. But
Yeah.
it's or hate's still a strong word. I don't hate Jak 2. But it just annoys
Yeah,
me because
I
it
don't
was
hate Tech 2. I'm actually surprised to see that you feel so strongly about it, 'cause
I
I
do
don't feel
because
quite as strongly. There were just things that were kind of frustrating me about it, but
like
overall, I was still interested. I got a little frustrated with, the outside of the city level. There's a capture the flag mission you have to run, it's your first one. You go outside of the city and the platform and then
right.
come back into the city, and there it was like the map is just difficult to read in this game, and I don't understand why it needed to be difficult to read. You didn't need a map really
Mhm.
on Jak
Jak
1
1. Mm-mm, not at
because
all.
it was linear. Your path would well,
It
it
was
wasn't
well, yeah, I was
completely
gonna say the
linear, but
individual levels were open, but the
yeah,
path between them was relatively linear.
right.
Yeah.
Or at least there was a path to follow. There
Yeah,
was a
sure, sure.
clue. You know,
Yeah.
you kind of knew where you could see where the game wanted you to go because there
Right.
was a pathway there. So that was nice, and it added to the flow of the game and the pacing of the game.
Yeah.
So I think that's one criticism that I would have of this game is the pacing. The
Yeah.
pacing feels
Yeah,
slower because
100%. 100%, man.
it's not that linear progression that a platformer needs. A platformer kind of needs if your game isn't they talked about it when they were making Crash Bandicoot. A platformer needs that progression. You move from left to right on the
Mhm.
screen. Right? That was the classic 2D platformer. Then when 3D came along, Crash Bandicoot tried to solve that problem by limiting the play area that you could be in. They
Right.
limited the 3D space down to a more narrow canal, so
Right.
it kind of
Which
operated like a side-scrolling 3D game. And then,
doesn't
you
need to
know,
work that way.
people
Like
no,
just to be clear, it's
I was
easier to
arriving
design
at
a good
my
game. that
Yeah,
way.
I
Go
was
ahead. Go
arriving
ahead.
at
I'm sorry.
my point here with all of my rambling. I'm sorry. Um, I games kept building upon that formula, and they found a way to make a 3D action platformer flow. And Jak 1 was a perfect example of that. But this game is falling flat of that because, like we were saying, I think they pulled missions and vehicle stages from GTA, right? That's popular. And
100%.
then
It had
and
to
then
be GTA.
we pull these kind of aesthetics from like maybe Ratchet and Clank. We get a little bit of rusty factory stuff in there, and then we get some stuff that the kiddies like, right? It felt like a lot of that. It felt kind of like
Yeah,
there was
it's
some
just it
interference.
lost its identity as Jak,
Yes,
and that's why I was saying like I don't think Jak 2 is a bad game. I
right,
think it's a bad Jak game. And that's
right,
that's the point that I really want to get across here because as a game on its own, it's perfectly fine. It just to me it's not Jak. It's like Final Fantasy 13, the example that I bring up all the time in these situations.
okay, mm-hmm.
Final Fantasy 13 is a perfectly fine game. There's nothing wrong with it as a video
Right,
game. But whenever
okay,
you stand it up next to the Final Fantasies that came before it, it just falls flat completely because
mm-hmm.
it's a bad Final Fantasy game. It's way
Right,
too linear until
mm-hmm.
like the end of the game. The combat is just too different. Like and like yeah, they had to evolve it at some point, so I understand there had to be like some sort of stepping stone, but like it just
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was the same sort of thing as with Jak 2. They didn't
Right,
do a good job transitioning to where they wanted to go with it.
right,
Um and again with Jak 2, on top of that, the thing that really irks me is the fact that it does just feel rushed to me. There's more glitchiness in just normal play.
mm,
The controls and platforming don't feel as polished. Like
yeah,
you mentioned with the driving around doesn't feel as polished. I don't think the mission system works as well as just having areas for you to explore. Like it's
mm,
just I wanted to like it a lot and I didn't. And it's just
okay.
it's upsetting.
I got you. I got you.
I still would play to get us towards the the exit here. I would play just
Yes.
one more level. I do want to finish it more to get myself
Okay.
to Jak 3 than to actually finish this game on its own, right? Because
That's
this
fair.
game is fun, but this
Yeah.
game's only good enough to me to be on like my backlog, something that I'll play eventually because
Right.
I want to play Jak 3 and see if the hype around that one is as good
Right.
as what everyone says it is, makes
Agreed.
this go towards the top of my list of something that I want to finish. But
Hmm.
otherwise it would be like a bottom of the barrel, slightly above average game for me personally. Like
Right.
yeah.
Yep. I pretty much feel the same way. I would play just one more level. But also I would play just one more level like you to get to Jak 3. I
Yeah.
wanna I wanna know what else Jak 3 is offering, as
Right.
well as what else Jak 2 is offering. I'm sure there's some
Right, yeah.
stage
I hope it gets
that
better
I'm going to
later.
enjoy. There were
To
stages of the first game that was frustrated with
right.
from time to time. There were little
Oh,
moments
sure.
where I felt like something was
100%.
like
Definitely.
there was a lot of moments actually in the first Jak because there is some vehicle driving in the first Jak,
Mhm.
and it usually that's what I disliked. Like
Yeah.
anytime I would find a level that I didn't like, it was vehicles.
I have
Like
more
there's
experience with Jak 1 on the HD remake of it or remaster of it or
okay,
whatever. And to
okay,
me that was a damn near perfect game.
okay,
Um honestly,
gotcha.
like the vehicle stuff didn't bother me. I mean I struggled with it from time to time, but it
It
definitely
usually wasn't
didn't
the
bother me.
control. I always felt like it was the difficulty
Hmm.
of the vehicle sections. Always seemed like a spike for me. Like I would just breeze through the platforming, and then when I would get to the vehicle section, all of a sudden I would keep dying.
And
You
I
know what I mean?
mean this I say this with love, but that sounds like maybe a you problem.
It does, yeah, yeah. It's
And
quite
like
possibly a problem.
no, like I do remember dying on the vehicle sections though. I'm not going to sit here and say they were easy or anything like that, especially the one
Yeah,
where you're going through the lava and you have to keep yourself cooled
that's
off by collecting like
exactly
the water balloons or whatever.
the one I was
Like
talking about.
I
Yeah.
definitely struggled with that a little bit every now and then, but like after I got
Mhm.
the hang of it, I was able to go back and forth across there without any sort of issue. Like I just had to learn how to control it, how
Ah,
to drive it a little bit. Um
Christian, this has the thing. We need to come up with a name for the thing. We talk about the thing sometimes here on the podcast where a game that is a pale imitation of something
mm,
reminds you of the better thing. and
Yeah.
it makes you want to play the better thing. And
Yeah.
now we're talking about the better thing. We're talking
Yeah.
about Jak 1.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've gotten onto the topic of Jak 1 because of Jak 2. We're
Yeah.
like, wow, that's like a pale imitation of what the first game was.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that instead. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
that
We love Jak 1.
that does happen a fair
Yeah.
bit, honestly.
Hmm.
But yeah. I mean, I don't have a whole lot more to say about Jack 2, to be honest. I plan on finishing it, and whenever I do finish it, I'm sure I'll have a little bit more thoughts. The more I
Yeah.
watch the footage playing back, though, while we're recording the podcast, the more I despise how brown everything is, because I'm just thinking back, and maybe it's rose-tinted glasses or nostalgia or
That's
whatever for, years ago, but I'm just thinking back of all of the vibrant greens and yellows and the lava levels with the reds and all of that from Jak 1, and this
blues.
entire section here, yeah, the blues of the waters and whatnot, everything here is just brown with a little bit of red, which, I mean, let's be honest, is basically brown. uh,
Well,
like, it's just so bland,
right. Yes. Very
and
bland.
that's, the more I watch, the more it's annoying me, so yeah.
Yep. That's what my dad says about our hometown. All of the colors are so washed out and bland. We
That sounds like he has
not
depression.
well, we don't have time to unpack all of that, but we I mean, he's not completely wrong, and also I'm not going to disclose obviously on the public podcast or stream where we live, but in our town we had a bridge that's a main bridge from one city to another city, and it used to be yellow, a vibrant
Mhm.
yellow for
Mhm.
many years, and about 10 years ago they painted it gray.
Did you know? Did you know? Swear to God. Swear to God.
Yeah.
Oh, if you're watching the footage live right now, you can see a section where you can just walk straight into the geometry,
Yeah.
because this game is rushed out. Anyways, on that
Right.
note, I realized for the first time that they changed the color of that bridge. I swear to
When?
God, like a month ago. Like a
What?
month ago. Yes. I never noticed. I was like, oh
How
shit,
could you
because
not
they're
how could
currently
you not
doing work.
remember it
They're
being
currently doing
being
work on this bridge, right? The
right?
one that he's talking about. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh cool, they must have painted it while they were doing work on there. And my girlfriend
No.
Noodle, she's like, what are you talking about? And I said, look at it, it's like this dark grayish blue color. And she's like, no, it's been that color, hasn't it? And I was like, no, it was like a brownish yellow thing or something like that.
Yeah.
I kind of like the fresh coat of gray paint here. It's something a little bit different. She's like, no, it's been that color for a while.
No,
It's
yeah,
like,
it's been that color for a long time. They did that when we were in high school, sir.
I in my mind it's still yellow.
Nope.
So
Been about
like
10 years.
so yeah, that's a thing. I drive past that bridge damn near every day, just for
Every day,
reference for
yeah.
everyone. Yeah.
Right.
And I drive across that bridge about once every couple of weeks. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's amazing, really, that I just now realized that. But anyways,
Yeah.
guys, I think that's it for the Just One More Level podcast. One of these days, I'll
Yeah,
see a
I'd say
doctor
so.
about my memory issues.
Alright.
But
Um, yeah. So that was Jak 2, everybody. Yep.
yeah.
Thank you so much for continuing to watch and support the podcast through your podcast provider of choice. We really appreciate it. You don't have to, but you do, and that's why we appreciate it. So thank you. And
Thank
until
you
next time.
guys.
Yeah.
Until next time, and real quick before we go, for people on
Oh
live
yeah.
stream, we're going to be playing Stardew Valley after this, just a moment
Yes,
afterwards.
we are.
And for people who aren't watching us live, I'm sure
Oh,
it'll be uploaded eventually to YouTube. We're pretty
yeah.
behind on getting things uploaded at the moment,
Sure.
but it'll get there. So
But
yeah,
speaking of, I can mention on the podcast. I don't know how this is going to coordinate with my YouTube channel, but you can check all of our personal channels out in the description below, and please
yes,
do,
yeah,
because
you can.
Christian is doing some crazy things over on Twitch. Not crazy things, but interesting things.
Right,
He's
just
playing
playing every PlayStation
every
2 game. That's
PlayStation 2, every single
that's all.
PlayStation 2 game released in North America
Thank you for
over
clarifying.
the
Yes,
next amount of years.
5-ish, I'm
He's gonna be
estimating.
doing this. Yeah.
But
Um,
maybe more.
that is his goal, and no emulation.
No
He's doing this
emulation.
all
Yeah,
on real
it's all
hardwood,
yep, all real
all on
hardware,
real
real
hardware.
games. It's a lot of fun. And
So
since John plugged me real quick, I'll go ahead and plug
yeah,
him. Every once in a
yeah,
while, he's streaming over on his own channel. Right now, he's trying to play through all the Resident Evil games whenever he has the
yeah.
time. So
Uh-huh.
give him a follow if you haven't already at the Doorsman, I believe it is, right?
Thank you. Yes, the
Yeah,
Dorse
yeah.
Man on
Yep.
Twitch and on YouTube. Thank
Yep,
you,
yep.
thank you, thank you.
But all
So
right, guys. I'm sorry.
No,
Did you
we bye
have?
bye.
You good?
Nope. Nope.
Okay.
We bye bye.
We bye bye. All
All right.
right. As always, be kind. We'll see you next time. Thank you for joining. Bye bye.